I suppose before going any further, I should point out that I keep confusing the name Stephen Webb, who's a man who's produced quite an interesting booklet, with Stephen Ward, who's the man connected with the Profumo affair. But this policy exchange think tank, led by Stephen Webb, to address immigration, has made a number of recommendations which have been published today, sort of slid out. Not very many people seem to be taking notice of this. Auctioning visas for students and NHS workers, and establishing an offshore reception centre on Ascension Island. These are his ideas. They're driven allegedly by necessity, but in truth they spring from a deeper well of political fantasy, one that imagines 35 million people yearning to storm the shores of the UK. It conflates aspiration with action, fear with facts, and ends up advocating policies that are both impractical and morally dubious. The policy exchange suggests that auctioning visas will allocate them to the best candidates while generating funds for public services. NHS visas, for instance, would supposedly fund the health service. Meanwhile, Ascension Island, a remote volcanic outpost, would serve as a detention and processing centre for asylum seekers, a sort of, it could be called a Napoleon visa. Let's not mince words. These are solutions born of they're not solutions born of pragmatism, they're solutions born of insanity. They are panic-driven measures wrapped in the language of efficiency. And somebody has made a nice little earner out of spending a year writing rubbish. Auctioning visas risks creating a classist system where wealth, not skill or merit, determines entry. And meanwhile, the logistics of establishing a reception centre on Ascension Island, 2,200 miles from the UK, are Kafkaesque, invoking images of gulags rather than humane immigration management. And the net migration reached a record 906,000 in 2023, and small boat crossings rose by 25% in 2024. But let's contextualise. Small boats accounted for 28% of asylum claims, and the policy exchange leans heavily on a misleading statistic that 34 million people globally wish to migrate to the UK. This figure assumes desire equates to action, ignoring the fact that only a fraction have the means or the motivation to make this leap from fantasy to reality. Further, the report notes that courts overturned nearly half of rejected asylum claims, which reflects poor initial decision-making rather than a failure of the system. Instead of addressing these inefficiencies, these proposals seek to double down on enforcement and offshore containment. A lot of this is about the inadequacy of the Home Office. If anybody's tried to interface, to connect, to deal with the Home Office, they will know that it's an impossible task at the moment. You can't contact the Home Office. The Home Office has no telephone number. The Home Office has no address. Petit France has died. It's impossible to deal with the Home Office. And equally, the Home Office is idle. It doesn't process the asylum claims. It delegates to other private companies, hotels to look after migrants, and advice centres to look after anything to do with the passport. And if something goes beyond processing a passport, nobody can help you at all. Nobody can help. And the passport office claims, the Home Office claims to respond within 40 calendar days. That's over a month. And it doesn't. I can tell you this as a fact. It doesn't. It's lazy, it's good for nothing, it's bone idle, it's useless, it's pumped up with its own audacity and arrogance. So the problem with our immigration, the problem with our visas, our passports and all this other stuff controlled by the Home Office, is the Home Office is a ministry that doesn't work. It's people by people who are lazy and who have been given a license to be lazy. It's called the hostile environment. Initially implemented by Blunkett, then enshrined in rhetoric by Theresa May, and constantly dripping out as a demonstration of indolence. And the Ascension Island idea isn't even new. The notion of sending migrants to Ascension Island smacks of colonial nostalgia. It assumes that detaining people far away will deter others. It's a theory borrowed from Australia's Operation Sovereign Borders and from Suella Braverman's madness of Rwanda. But Australia's system faced high costs, international condemnation, severe mental health crises among detainees. Is this the model the UK seeks to replicate? And the legal and the logistical hurdles are vast. The UK would likely face challenges under human rights law and international agreements, and the financial cost, the moral cost would outweigh any perceived benefit. And the auction of visas risks commodifying migration. It may raise funds temporarily, but at what cost to the UK's reputation as a fair and inclusive society? Students and workers would become commodities rather than contributors, exacerbating inequality and undermining sectors like healthcare and education that depend on diversity and access. This approach also assumes that employers and universities will absorb the costs and wait to see. But small businesses and lower-tier educational institutions will struggle to compete, leaving only the wealthiest organisations able to participate. The result? A migration system skewed towards profit, not public good. And this obsession with reducing immigration numbers has led to perverse policy ponderings by both Labour and by the Conservatives. The report reveals biases in the system. Immigration benefits are privatised while costs are socialised. Employers profit from skilled migrants while the public bears the burden of underfunded public services. Yet, instead of addressing these structural issues, the proposed measures scapegoat migrants. The policy also fuels public misconceptions. Immigration is framed as a threat to sovereignty, culture and security. In reality, migrants bolster the economy. They fill skill gaps. They enrich cultural life. And the failure lies not in migration itself, but in the political leadership that is unable or unwilling to articulate the benefits of migration. These proposals are symptomatic of a deep political malaise. Alistair Downer, in his foreword to the report, which I've read, warns that failure to control migration will lead to the rise of populists. They're already here. Ironically, the very policies advocated here, harsh, divisive, detached from reality, are tailor-made to stoke populist flames. Rather than engaging in fear-mongering, we need policies grounded in realism and humanity. And this includes streamlining visa processes, getting the Home Office to actually function, investing in integration and addressing root causes of migration, such as global inequality and conflict. It is not migrants who need managing, but the political narrative surrounding them. It's not migrants who need control, but the politicians and those who are advising the politicians. We stand at a crossroads. Immigration policy can be a tool for progress, enriching our society and economy, or it can become a bludgeon wielded in service of fear and division. The proposals before us, visa auctions and offshore detention, belong firmly in the latter category. They are impractical, they're inhumane, they're economically short-sighted, they are stupid. And they are the children birthed by madness. We should not succumb to this insanity of assuming aspiration equals action, or that 35 million people are poised to migrate tomorrow to the shores of Britain. Instead, we need to demand a system that reflects our values: fairness, compassion, pragmatism. Anything less risks not just policy failure, but a failure of the very principles we claim to uphold.